She thought her greatest threat was the knife at her back, until she discovered the true betrayal was smiling at her side. Now, armed only with shattered trust and dangerous truths, Marcella Rhodes must outweed a conspiracy that turns allies into predators and mentors into monsters before she becomes their next erased name. The rain had begun before dawn, streaking the glass walls of Helix Dynamics with a relentless rhythm that matched Marcella Rhodes' pulse. She stood at the edge of the executive floor, her reflection blurred in the storm-darkened window. Below, the city glimmered under a web of neon, its arteries choked with traffic. Inside, silence pressed heavily, broken only by the muted hum of servers buried deep in the building's core. Marcella had been here before everyone else. Habit, some would say. Survival, she knew better. In her world, trust was currency, and loyalty was fiction. She had learned both lessons the hard way. Every promotion, every boardroom victory had come at a cost, a knife concealed in a handshake, a smile hiding betrayal. Her phone vibrated. A single message lit the screen. They're moving faster than expected. Be ready. No name. No signature. Just like every time before. Marcella inhaled slowly, straightening her tailored blazer. She was 36, head of strategic operations, and the quiet architect behind Helix's most profitable expansions. Yet for all her achievements, the whispers of her colleagues clung to the walls. Resentment, envy, fear. She could feel them circling, waiting for an opening. The glass doors slid open behind her. Eric Monroe, the company's golden boy and her fiercest rival, strode in with the casual arrogance of someone convinced the world was his inheritance. His tie was loosened, his smile rehearsed. Early start, Marcella? His voice carried a teasing lilt, but his eyes flickered with calculation. She turned, her expression unreadable. Some of us believe in being prepared. Eric chuckled, dropping a folder onto the polished conference table. Prepared for what? Another late-night audit? Or maybe for the board meeting that's going to change everything? Marcella's gaze held steady. The storm outside cracked with lightning, briefly illuminating the sharp angles of her face. Change is inevitable, she replied, her tone cool. But not always in the direction you expect. Eric smirked, but something in her calm unnerved him. For all his bravado, Marcella sensed the tremor beneath the surface. He knew something was coming. What he didn't know was how far she was willing to go. As the storm battered the city, the first pieces of a dangerous game slid silently into place. And Marcella Rhodes, for better or worse, was at its center. The boardroom filled slowly, leather chairs creaking as directors settled in with coffee cups and tablets. The storm outside dimmed the morning light, casting the space in muted gray. For Marcella, it felt less like a meeting and more like a battlefield. Eric, of course, played master of ceremonies. He moved easily between board members, leaning in with practiced charm, whispering jokes, laying hands on shoulders as though he owned the place. Marcella watched in silence, her fingers lightly brushing the edge of her notes. She didn't need charm, she had precision. Ladies and gentlemen, Eric began once the room hushed. Today we're making history. Helix Dynamics is at a turning point, and I have a proposal that will catapult us into a new era of growth. The words were honeyed, but Marcella heard the venom underneath. He was maneuvering to sideline her. The proposal he dangled was hers, an initiative she had built, nurtured, and perfected over the last year. He had stolen it. Marcella's jaw tightened. Her phone, face down beside her folder, vibrated again. Another message blinked on the screen. Don't react yet. Let him show his hand. She didn't know who sent them. For months now, these anonymous texts had appeared at pivotal moments, warning her, guiding her. Friend or foe, she couldn't tell. But so far, they'd been right. Eric tapped the screen at the head of the table. A sleek presentation came alive, displaying figures, projections, and strategies Marcella recognized line for line. The board members leaned forward, intrigued. This initiative, Eric declared, will double our market share within 18 months. We'll secure international partners and establish dominance in sectors our competitors haven't even touched. Applause rippled lightly through the room. Marcella remained still. Her silence was her weapon. When Eric finished, all eyes turned expectantly to her. The board knew her reputation: incisive, calculating, unflinching. She rose slowly, letting the pause stretch just long enough to shift the air. "Impressive presentation," she said evenly, "though I must commend your resourcefulness, Eric. It takes nerve to present work you didn't create." The room tensed. Eric's smile faltered. Marcella placed her hand on her folder, then slid it open. Inside were not only her original drafts but also time-stamped emails, technical memos, and encrypted files. The evidence was overwhelming. She let the documents rest on the table, just enough for the nearest directors to glimpse. "You see," she continued, her voice calm but razor-sharp, "vision isn't just about stealing ideas. It's about having the discipline to execute them. And unlike some, I don't play games with this company's future." A murmur swept the room. Eric's face drained of color. Marcella sat back down, her expression unchanging. But beneath the surface, her mind was racing. She had won this round, but the game was far from over. Whoever was sending those messages knew more than they should. And sooner or later, she would have to decide whether they were saving her or setting her up. The meeting ended in uneasy silence. Directors filed out with guarded glances, carrying whispers like contraband. Eric lingered at the far end of the room, his polished smile cracked, his fists clenched at his sides. Marcella collected her papers methodically, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a glance. She knew he was watching her, calculating his next move. "Enjoy your little victory," he said finally, his voice low and edged. "But don't think it'll last. People don't like working with someone who hides daggers under silk gloves." Marcella looked up, meeting his gaze with steady calm. "And people don't like being deceived by liars dressed as leaders. Be careful, Eric. Sooner or later, truth has a way of surfacing." His jaw twitched, but he said nothing more. He stormed out, the door hissing shut behind him. Marcella allowed herself a single, measured breath. Outwardly composed, but inside, tension curled tight in her chest. She wasn't naive. Humiliating Eric in front of the board would provoke retaliation. And Eric Monroe didn't fight fair. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. "You've drawn blood. He'll strike back tonight. Don't be alone." Marcella's pulse quickened. She scanned the empty room, half expecting to find someone lurking in the shadows. But she was alone, at least visibly. The storm outside had quieted, leaving the city bathed in slick reflections. She left the boardroom and descended into the parking garage. The echo of her heels seemed too loud, too exposed. Halfway to her car, movement flickered in her peripheral vision. A shadow slipped behind a pillar. Marcella froze. "Who's there?" Her voice was calm, but her hand tightened around her key fob, finger hovering over the silent alarm button. No answer. Just the low hum of fluorescent lights. Then a laugh. Low, mocking, familiar. Eric stepped out, his features carved into a mask of smugness. But he wasn't alone. Two men, unfamiliar, lingered behind him, their presence radiating menace. "You embarrass me today," Eric said, his voice smooth but laced with venom. That was a mistake. Marcella's stomach tightened. She had expected corporate games, whispered campaigns, maybe sabotage. But this was something darker. She took a step back, her eyes darting subtly to the security camera overhead. Dead. No blinking red light. Someone had planned this. "Walk away, Eric," she said, her voice steady. "You don't want to start a war you can't finish." He smirked, tilting his head. "Oh, I don't plan on starting it. I just plan on ending you." The two men closed in. Marcella's heart pounded, but her mind sharpened. Fear was fuel. If they thought she was cornered, they didn't know her at all. The parking garage was silent except for the echo of footsteps drawing closer. Marcella's pulse thundered in her ears, but her expression remained unreadable. Fear was the enemy's expectation.
Control was her weapon.
The two men flanked Eric like shadows, their movements efficient, practiced.
Mercenaries, she realized.
This wasn't a drunken fit of rage. This was orchestrated. You really think this will make you stronger? Marcella said, her voice steady. Attacking me in a garage? Do you know what the board will do when they find out? Eric's smirk widened. Who said they'll ever find out? The words chilled the air. Marcella's thumb slid across the key fob. Not the panic alarm. She knew the cameras were already dead, the security feeds tampered with. Instead, she triggered the silent tracker she'd had installed months ago, a precaution most would call paranoia. She called it foresight. One of the men reached for her arm. Marcella moved first. She twisted sharply, the motion precise, catching him off balance. His grunt echoed off the concrete. She wasn't a fighter in the traditional sense, but she had taken enough training to know how to use surprise and leverage. The second man lunged, and Marcella ducked, the edge of her briefcase slamming against his ribs. Pain shot up her arm from the impact, but she didn't stop. She sprinted toward the stairwell, her heels striking sparks against the concrete. Get her! Eric's voice roared behind her. Heavy footsteps pounded closer. Marcella shoved open the stairwell door, her lungs burning. She darted down a flight, then froze. Another silhouette was waiting below, blocking her path. A trap. They had planned every exit. The man advanced, his face obscured by shadow. But instead of striking, he stopped and whispered urgently, Marcella, this way. Now. Her heart jolted. The voice was unfamiliar, but the tone carried urgency, not threat. Who are you? She demanded, keeping distance. No time. You want to live? Trust me. The door behind them slammed open. Eric's men were seconds away. Marcella's mind raced. The stranger's presence was impossible to ignore. Was this the same person who had been sending the messages? Ally or a deeper enemy? The stranger held out his hand. Choose, Marcella.
Now.
Her pulse hammered. She had seconds, maybe less. And in that suspended heartbeat, with danger closing in from every side, Marcella Rhodes realized her life, and the truth buried inside Helix dynamics, would never be the same again. Marcella's hand hovered in the air, her breath sharp and shallow. Behind her, Eric's men thundered closer, boots clanging against steel steps. In front of her, the stranger waited, calm, composed, as though the chaos wasn't real. She didn't have time to debate. She seized his hand. In one swift motion, he pulled her down a narrow service corridor she hadn't noticed before. The concrete walls seemed to close in as they ran, twisting through the dim underbelly of the garage. Her pulse pounded, every echo of pursuit rattling her nerves. Finally, the stranger shoved open a rusted door, guiding her into a maintenance room filled with pipes and humming generators. He slammed the door shut, locking it from the inside. For the first time, she saw his face clearly. He was mid-30s, sharp jawline, dark hair damp from the rain, eyes burning with intensity. Not corporate. Not hired muscle. Something else entirely. Marcella stepped back, chest heaving. Who the hell are you? He wiped his brow, his gaze fixed on her. Name's Adrian Vega. I'm not with them. I've been watching Helix for months, watching you. And if I hadn't stepped in, you'd be in the trunk of a black sedan right now. Her eyes narrowed. That doesn't answer my question. Why me? Why now? Adrian hesitated, then pulled a folded sheet of paper from his jacket. He handed it to her. The paper bore the Helix Dynamics logo, an internal memo she had never seen before. Her stomach tightened as she scanned the contents. Project Locus. Confidential. Asset Neutralization Protocol. Marcella's hands trembled. The lines described something chilling, a covert operation designed to eliminate internal threats to the company. And her name was at the top of the list. She looked up at him, her throat dry. Where did you get this? Adrian's voice dropped, firm but urgent. From someone on the inside, who still has a conscience. Marcella, you don't understand. This isn't just Eric's ambition. The board has sanctioned this. You've become a liability they can't control. Her mind reeled. She had always known the company thrived on ruthless efficiency, but this was murder wrapped in corporate language. Before she could speak, heavy footsteps echoed outside the maintenance door. Eric's voice, muffled but clear, barked orders. They hadn't shaken them off completely. Adrian leaned close, his eyes locking with hers. If you want to live, you're going to have to trust me. Not for long, just long enough to get out of here. Then you can decide whether I'm your enemy or your only chance. Marcella's pulse hammered. Trust was the one thing she never gave freely. But in that moment, with her world collapsing around her, she knew she didn't have the luxury of doubt. She gave a single, sharp nod.
Fine.
But if you betray me, Adrian, you won't need the board to end you. I'll do it myself. A flicker of a smile crossed his lips. Fair enough. The lock rattled. The door shuttered. They were out of time. The maintenance door shuttered again, harder this time. A bolt clanged loose. Marcella's instinct screamed that they had seconds. Adrian grabbed her wrist. This way. He led her toward a grated vent in the corner. It looked far too small for a clean escape, but he was already wrenching the cover off with a crowbar pulled from behind the generator. The metal screeched, sparks flying. Marcella's pulse surged. You can't be serious. It connects to the old delivery tunnels. It's the only way they won't think to check first. The lock rattled again. A fist slammed against the door. Eric's voice thundered from outside. Marcella, don't make this worse. Come out now, and maybe you'll walk away. Marcella's jaw clenched. Walk away? From her own company? From the empire she had built brick by brick, deal by deal, betrayal by betrayal? Not a chance. Go, Adrian hissed. She dropped to her knees, sliding into the vent. The metal scraped her blazer, catching at the fabric, but she didn't stop. Adrian followed close behind, his movements swift and controlled. Behind them, the door finally burst open. Heavy boots clanged against the floor. A flashlight beam sliced the darkness, just as Marcella and Adrian vanished into the tunnel shadows. The air was damp, laced with rust and oil. The tunnel stretched endlessly, a narrow artery beneath the city. Marcella's breath came ragged, the sound magnified in the confined space. How do you even know these tunnels? She asked between breaths. I used to wear a badge, Adrian said grimly. Not the kind Helix hands out. Before they buried it, I worked the task force that investigated corporate espionage. Helix made sure we failed. Marcella's eyes snapped to him. So, this is revenge? He met her gaze through the dim light filtering from above. Revenge, justice, call it what you want. All I know is, I'm not letting them bury another name. Especially yours. The intensity in his voice caught her off guard. For the briefest moment, beneath the adrenaline and suspicion, a flicker of heat stirred in her chest. She forced it down. Emotions were dangerous. Emotions got people killed. A sudden clang echoed ahead. Adrian froze, raising a hand to silence her. Another sound followed, boots striking metal grates. They're already in the tunnels, he whispered. Marcella's blood ran cold. They weren't just being chased, they were being herded. Then they know these passages too, she murmured. Adrian's jaw tightened. Which means someone inside fed them the map. We're not just fighting Eric. We're fighting the whole machine. The beam of another flashlight slashed through the darkness ahead. Voices shouted, closing in from both sides. Marcella's mind raced. Trapped again. Outnumbered. But she refused to die in a tunnel like a discarded secret. Her eyes darted upward, spotting a rusted ladder bolted to the wall. A faint glow leaked from the hatch above. Street level. There, she whispered, pointing. Adrian nodded. You climb. I'll cover. Marcella hesitated. You'll be trapped. He gave a thin smile. I've been trapped for years. Go. Their pursuers' voices grew louder, closer, sharper. Marcella placed her hands on the ladder, every muscle taut. She climbed, one rung at a time, her heart pounding as the hatch loomed closer. Behind her, she heard Adrian draw a weapon, a low click that echoed like a promise. Then came the first gunshot. The tunnel exploded with sound. Marcella's hands were still trembling on the steering wheel as she tore out of the parking garage. The city lights blurred through the windshield, her mind racing faster than the engine beneath her. She kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting Daniel's shadow to reappear, lurking in pursuit.
Her phone buzzed again.
This time, it wasn't Daniel, it was a new number. For a moment, she considered ignoring it, but something in her gut told her to answer. She swiped the screen. Marcella, a calm, unhurried male voice said. That was impressive, slipping away like that. Her heart stopped. Who is this? A pause. Then, let's just say I've been watching. Daniel isn't the only one you need to worry about. He's desperate, reckless. But me? I'm patient. And I hold pieces of this game you haven't even glimpsed yet. Marcella pulled the car over, headlights cutting through the darkened street. What do you want? She demanded, forcing her voice to steady. The stranger chuckled softly. The truth.
The same thing you're chasing.
But unlike you, I already know how it ends. The line went dead. Marcella sat frozen, the glow of the dashboard washing her in pale light. She wanted to scream, to throw the phone against the windshield, but instead she shoved it into her bag and gripped the wheel. If there was another player in this deadly game, she had to get ahead of them, fast. By the time she reached her apartment, her nerves were frayed to the edge. She locked the door, checked every window twice, then collapsed onto the couch. But rest wouldn't come. Daniel was dangerous, but this anonymous caller, this puppet master, felt worse. And in the silence of her apartment, Marcella realized something chilling. Every step she'd taken tonight had been anticipated. Someone had been watching, recording, waiting. The real trap hadn't been Daniel's knife in the parking garage. It was already unfolding around her. The knock on Marcella's door came at midnight, sharp, deliberate, 3 times in a row. Her pulse quickened. She froze in the living room, barefoot, clutching the lamp cord as if it were a lifeline. Whoever it was had waited for the city to go quiet, for her defenses to wear thin. Another knock, harder this time. She crept toward the peephole, breath shallow. What she saw nearly buckled her knees. Daniel. His face was swollen, a thin line of blood running from his temple. His eyes darted left and right, like a cornered animal. Marcella, open up.
Please.
You don't understand. They're after me too. Every instinct screamed not to trust him. Yet something in his voice, raw, frantic, made her hesitate. Go away, she shouted through the door. You tried to kill me. No. I was supposed to scare you. Keep you from digging deeper. But now, his voice cracked. Now I'm disposable. Just like you. Marcella's fingers trembled against the deadbolt. Was this another ploy, or had the balance of power shifted? Before she could decide, her phone lit up on the counter. A message from the unknown number. Don't open the door. He's lying. He'll drag you down with him. Her head spun. 2 voices pulling her in opposite directions, neither trustworthy. Daniel pounded harder. Please, Marcella. I have proof. I know who's behind this. Her breath hitched. Proof. The word sliced through her hesitation. She cracked the door chain, enough to see him more clearly. He shoved a folder through the gap, papers, photos, documents scrawled with numbers and signatures. She grabbed them, slammed the door, and threw the lock back in place. Flipping through the pages, her stomach dropped. Every sheet was tied to a company account she knew well. Transfers. Shell corporations. A name repeated across them all like a curse. Her boss. The man she trusted. The man who had mentored her. A sudden crash snapped her out of it, the living room window shattering inward. A black-clad figure lunged through the glass, mask gleaming under the streetlight. Marcella screamed, ducking just as the intruder tackled Daniel to the floor. The folder scattered across the carpet. The 2 men struggled, Daniel shouting her name before a blade silenced him forever. Marcella pressed herself against the wall, breath ragged, eyes wide. The masked figure stood, slowly turning toward her. He pulled off the mask with calm precision. And her world stopped. It wasn't a stranger. It was the man from her office, the quiet, dependable colleague she'd trusted implicitly, the one who had always faded into the background. He smiled coldly, stepping over Daniel's body. "You weren't supposed to get this far, Marcella."
But don't worry.
He reached down, scooping up the folder. "By tomorrow, you'll be nothing more than a footnote in a story no one will ever read." Her last thought before bolting down the hall was clear as ice. The true enemy had always been standing right beside her. Marcella's bare feet pounded against the apartment hallway tiles as she sprinted, the metallic taste of fear sharp in her mouth. Behind her, the muffled thud of boots echoed, calm, steady, unhurried. Her attacker wasn't rushing. He knew the building. He knew she was trapped. She burst into the stairwell, skidding on the concrete steps, heart hammering like a war drum. One misstep, and she'd tumble down into nothing. But adrenaline sharpened her focus. She clutched the railing, taking the stairs two at a time. On the third-floor landing, she froze. A shadow stretched across the wall. He was already below her, waiting. Panic clawed at her throat. She shoved through the door into a deserted hallway and ducked into the laundry room. The hum of machines vibrated through the cramped space as she pressed herself into the shadows, chest heaving. Her phone buzzed. Hands trembling, she pulled it out. Another message from the unknown number. "You can't outrun him, but you can outthink him. Remember who signed those transfers. Follow the money." Marcella bit down hard on her lip. The message was right. Running wouldn't save her. She needed leverage. Something that could turn the tables. The folder, Daniel's folder. She'd left it scattered on her living room floor. Her stomach sank. The attacker would already have it. Unless. A sudden thought lit up in her mind. Daniel had shoved the folder through the chain, but she hadn't checked every page before the fight broke out. What if he'd hidden something? She tore open her bag, rifling through its contents. At the bottom, folded twice and tucked behind her notebook, she found it. A single sheet Daniel must have slipped in before handing her the file. Her hands shook as she unfolded it. It wasn't bank data. It was a photograph. A candid shot of her mentor, laughing, glass in hand, standing shoulder to shoulder with a very colleague now hunting her through the building. Marcella's breath caught. This wasn't just betrayal. This was an alliance. And if Daniel had risked everything to get this proof to her, then the conspiracy ran deeper than she'd imagined. The door to the laundry room creaked open. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, approached. Marcella clutched the photo against her chest, eyes blazing. She wasn't just running anymore. She was ready to fight. The laundry room's fluorescent light flickered, casting jagged shadows across the tile floor. Marcella crouched low, clutching the photo, her heartbeat sinking with the buzz of the dying bulb. The footsteps stopped just inside the doorway. "Marcella." The man's voice was calm, coaxing, almost gentle. "You've always been smarter than the rest. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." She pressed her back against the dryer, jaw tight. His words slithered into her ears, but she focused on the details around her, a spray bottle of detergent on the shelf, a rusted mop leaning against the wall, and, most importantly, the fire alarm panel above the door. Her mind snapped into survival mode. She grabbed the detergent bottle, popped the cap, and flung its contents across the floor. The slick, soapy liquid spread in a glistening sheet. "Still hiding?" he murmured, stepping deeper into the room. "You don't understand, Marcella. I'm not the villain here. I'm cleaning up a mess you were never supposed to see." He moved another step, his shoe sliding across the detergent. That was her moment. Marcella lunged for the fire alarm lever, yanking it down hard. Instantly, a piercing siren shattered the silence, red strobes flashing across the walls. The man cursed, stumbling as the floor betrayed his footing. Marcella didn't wait. She bolted past him, shoving his shoulder into the wall. He reached for her, but she slipped through the doorway and tore down the hall as fire doors slammed shut behind her, sealing off sections of the building. The chaos was her cover. As she sprinted through the stairwell, residents began pouring out of their apartments, some clutching children, others dragging pets. Confusion swirled everywhere, buying her precious seconds. She burst into the night air, lungs burning, and blended into the stream of people spilling onto the street. Her pursuer wouldn't risk exposing himself in front of a crowd, not yet. Marcella ducked into the shadows of a side street, clutching the photograph tightly. The flashing lights reflected in her eyes as fire trucks roared toward the building. For the first time all night, she wasn't just reacting. She had struck first, and it had worked. But her victory was razor-thin. Because even as she caught her breath, Marcella knew he'd recover fast, and next time, he wouldn't underestimate her. And with this photo in her hand, she had the one thing powerful enough to unravel his entire plan. Now it was her turn to go hunting. The city felt different at night, colder, sharper, as if every street lamp and shadow were conspiring to expose her. Marcella pulled her hood up and slipped into a 24-hour diner on the corner, its neon sign buzzing faintly in the drizzle. She slid into a booth near the back, the laminated seat sticking to her skin. A waitress poured her coffee without asking, eyes glazed from a long shift. Marcella wrapped her hands around the cup, needing the warmth to stop the tremor in her fingers. The photograph lay on the table between the salt shaker and napkin dispenser. Her mentor, Douglas Wren, the man who had championed her, who had seemed like a second father, and beside him, her colleague, Adrian Cole, smiling like old friends, glasses raised in a toast. Marcella traced the edge of the photo with her fingertip, rage simmering beneath her fear. Why would Douglas tie himself to someone like Adrian? What did they gain by orchestrating this chaos, by silencing people like Daniel?
Her phone buzzed again.
The same unknown number.
Now you see.
The rot isn't around you, it's above you. Douglas built this machine. Adrian oils the gears. But they're not the only ones. Marcella's throat tightened. She typed back with shaking fingers.
Who are you? Why are you helping me?
3 dots appeared, then vanished. A reply came through.
Let's just say I lost someone to them.
And I won't stop until they fall. Meet me tomorrow. 9 a.m. The observatory.
Come alone.
Marcella stared at the message, torn. Trusting an anonymous ally was dangerous, yet she had no other lead. She slipped the photo back into her bag and opened her laptop, the screen glow reflecting in her eyes. If she was going to face Douglas and Adrian's world, she needed to be armed. Not with weapons, but with truth. She began digging, hacking into financial databases, tracing transfers, cross-referencing shell accounts. Hours bled away until she uncovered something chilling, a single offshore account, tied not just to Douglas Wren, but to multiple government contracts, bribes, and disappearances. And there it was again. Adrian's name. His fingerprints all over the transactions. Marcella leaned back, blood pounding in her ears. This wasn't just corporate greed. It was an empire built on corruption, silenced whistleblowers, and orchestrated accidents. She snapped the laptop shut. The diner's clock ticked past 4 a.m. She had only a few hours until the meeting at the observatory. Marcella tightened her grip on the photo. For the first time, she wasn't running blindly. She had evidence. She had a lead. And tomorrow, she would have answers. But as she stepped back into the rain-soaked streets, a figure across the road lit a cigarette, the orange ember glowing like a watchful eye. Adrian Cole. He was already one step ahead. The observatory loomed on the hillside like a watchtower from another era, its glass dome reflecting the pale light of dawn. Mist coiled around the trees as Marcella climbed the stone steps, her bag heavy with the photograph and hacked files. Every instinct told her this was a trap. But she had no choice. Answers were waiting, and she was done running. The doors creaked open. The air inside was cold, the scent of dust and old machinery hanging heavy. A man stepped from the shadows. Tall, lean, with eyes etched in grief. "You came," he said softly. Marcella tightened her grip on her bag. "You're the one who's been messaging me." He nodded. "My name is Ethan Voss. My sister tried to expose Douglas and Adrian 2 years ago. She didn't survive the accident they arranged. Since then, I've been gathering what I could, but you, Marcella, you've shaken their foundation in ways I never could."
Marcella's throat went dry. His pain was real, but trust was still a razor's edge.
"Why help me now?" she asked.
"Because you have what I don't," Ethan replied. "Proof."
"And because tonight they'll move against you. If we don't act first, you'll vanish like the others." Before Marcella could answer, the echo of footsteps filled the dome. Adrian Cole emerged from the stairwell, calm as a man on a morning stroll. Behind him, Douglas Wren followed, his mentor, the man she once admired, his expression carved in stone. Marcella's chest clenched. Betrayal and fury twisted inside her. "Marcella," Douglas said, voice smooth, paternal. "You're tired.
Frightened.
You've let paranoia cloud your judgment." He gestured to Adrian. "He's saved you from Daniel. He's been protecting you." Lies, slick, venomous lies. Marcella slammed the photograph onto a nearby console, her voice cutting through the cavernous dome. "Protecting me? He murdered Daniel right in front of me. And you," she pointed at Douglas, her hands trembling, "you're the architect of all of this. The money, the bribes, the blood." Douglas's gaze hardened, no more warmth left in it. "You should have stayed in line. I gave you everything, opportunity, guidance, a career. And this is how you repay me." Adrian stepped forward, pulling a silenced pistol from his coat. "It's over, Marcella." The air split with a gunshot. Adrian staggered, blood blossoming across his shoulder. Ethan stood behind him, weapon smoking. "Not tonight," Ethan snarled. Chaos erupted. Adrian fired back, bullets ricocheting off steel beams. Marcella dove for cover, dragging Ethan down behind the console. Douglas fled toward the stairwell, clutching his briefcase. Marcella's eyes fell on the fire suppression panel, the same kind she'd pulled in the laundry room. Without hesitation, she slammed her palm against it. With a deafening hiss, the dome filled with white vapor. Visibility dropped to nothing. Adrian cursed, firing blindly, his footsteps slipping across the slick floor. Marcella crawled forward, heart thundering, until she collided with Douglas. His briefcase flew open, spilling documents, contracts, bank ledgers, photographs of victims. She grabbed as much as she could, clutching them to her chest. Through the fog, Adrian's shadow loomed closer, gun raised. Marcella braced herself, then another shot rang out. Adrian collapsed, Ethan standing over him, breathing hard. Silence returned, broken only by the hiss of the dying suppression system. Douglas was gone, escaped into the mist. Marcella stood trembling, the stolen evidence heavy in her arms. Adrian was finished, but the true mastermind had slipped away. Ethan touched her shoulder. "We got enough to bring him down. This isn't the end. It's the beginning." Marcella looked out through the glass dome, where the sunrise bled across the horizon. Her world had been shattered. Trust, loyalty, everything she once believed in. But she wasn't broken. With Ethan by her side, she had the truth. And with the truth came power. Douglas Wren thought he could erase her. But Marcella Rhodes was going to burn his empire to the ground.